The following is a paid advertisement of St. Anthony Hospital Orthopedics. References to any specific product, services, or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by St. Anthony Hospital, Carroll Broadcasting, or its advertisers. The views expressed by the host or guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Welcome to the St. Anthony Hospital Orthopedic Show with Dr. Richard Godding. Dr. Godding specializes in joint preservation, reconstruction, and replacement surgery, and brings over 25 years of orthopedic excellence to St. Anthony Hospital and to the Carroll area. For more information about Dr. Godding, his practice, or St. Anthony Orthopedics, go to santanthonyhospital.org or make an appointment by calling 712-794-5536.
Good Sunday morning, Iowa. It is Dr. Rick Godding here, and thank you, as usual, for spending some time with me. I appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy it. I just love when I hear people. I was actually walking into the hospital this very morning, and one of the volunteers said, "Hi, Doc, how you doing?" I said, "Oh, good." She said, "Oh, I listened to you on Sunday, really enjoyed it." And it just makes me feel good. And I hope that you're getting, obviously if people are listening, they're getting something out of it, right? And I just really am happy that people can get, I want it to be, obviously it's an orthopedics show, right? At least that's the cover story. But obviously every time, almost every single time, we spend about half the time talking about different stuff and half the time about orthopedics. And sometimes we go a little heavier on one than the other. Last time I had a guest on who had one of our arthrosurface shoulder resurfacings, and we spent pretty much the balance of the, or the entire, I should say, show talking about that. And, that's great. And then sometimes things kind of come up and there's other things I want to talk about. Oftentimes it's what's going on in my world. But I will say, gosh, it's beautiful today. And I hope this carries through to Sunday when you're listening to this. But Monday, today, the 12th, is spectacular. And just walking from my car into the studio here, I wanted to take like 3 laps around the building, which I probably should have because I was 5 minutes early anyway. But anyway, what a gorgeous time to go out and enjoy the weather. Get your vitamin D, from the sun, get your good feelings from God's creation and from the good feeling of just the wind and the sun on your skin and all that. Yes, we spent this last weekend in the yard again and got a bunch of more roses to plant, more mulch set down, more rocks moved, and just kind of setting up my backyard to be useful. And so, yeah, I've been out in it a lot, and I just feel great. I feel great physically and mentally from being out in this beautiful weather. And I wish it could stop right about now. See, now in Hawaii, when I lived in Hawaii, it rarely got to 90 degrees. And it never got below, let's say, 60. 60 was cold. Like, people are like, oh my gosh, it's so cold. So basically, between 90 and 60, even 90 is a little much for me. Say 86 to 70, if I could just stay there all the time. But I live in Iowa, so. But anyway, kind of want to talk a little bit about cell phones and teens and how different the society is and the way. So I can remember when I was in high school, sometimes I would spend the night, typically if I spent the night at a guy's house, which we did a fair amount in high school, but it was just usually one-on-one. Girls tend to have multiple girls at the sleepover. Anyway, but when I would spend the night at someone's house, sometimes we would play some video games. Occasionally we would watch a movie. But a lot of times we would just sit there and talk. And like when you would get in the car with somebody, sure, you turn on some music, but the passenger wouldn't be staring down at the phone. And there was just this higher level of human engagement that I'm sad that the kids are not experiencing. So last Sunday was Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day, by the way. I did forget to mention that, I believe. But my wife and my kids and I went, we got some bagels, and we locked the kids' phones in the car and went out to this rose garden and ate our bagels. And there happened to be a guy out there playing his trumpet, and it was just beautiful. It was nice. It was and everybody was really engaged. But, you have this thing that's designed, all these different things like TikTok, they're designed to be addictive. They are designed to give that dopamine hit. Dopamine is that chemical that gives you a rush, like a natural high. Runners can get it. You get it. You'll get a dopamine hit. Well, you can get a small dopamine hit from, I'll tell you what, you get a big, let me explain it this way. You get a big dopamine hit when you see your grandkids, okay? Or you see your dog or your kids, unless, usually, unless they've been bad. But dopamine is that chemical that just kind of, it washes over your body with like a good feeling. And a lot of drugs will give you a dopamine hit. That's why people take drugs. They're trying to feel good, right? They're trying to feel that hit of that chemical. Now, these things like TikTok and Instagram and even Facebook, they're all designed to give you a dopamine hit when you interact with it. And it's very addictive. And I was just watching this thing on my phone over the weekend. Yeah, I look at my phone a fair amount, and but I do a lot of things with it. I'm getting my Spanish better. I do my guitar practice with it. I even read scientific articles on it. So I try not to waste a lot of time on my phone, but I do use it. It's something you hardly can even function in society now if you don't have one, right? So you have to learn how to harness it. But at the same time, it's super addictive and designed to be that way. And so we're giving these kids these super addictive machines that have really sucked away a lot of the ability to interact and engage. And I know, I have a couple girls, they're 14 and 16, Madison and Sydney, and they are like all other teenage girls. They are in a situation where social interactions among girls that age can be rough. And they'll do well for a while, and then they'll have trouble for a while. And it's one of the biggest things you got to do with your kids or grandkids when they're doing that is you got to let them realize that all the other girls are having the same problems. And I know that because I listen to them all talk about it. I listen to my daughter's friends, talk about it, and then my daughters will tell me things, that their friends have said about how they're feeling, feeling isolated, ignored, outcast, all these things that teens can feel. And it's just magnified by these phones. And, when I was young, if I was in my room, I was reading a book or listening to music. I didn't have a TV in my room. I didn't want one, but we didn't have the money to have one anyway, even if I wanted one. But what I wasn't doing was getting bullied. And my girls have not been bullied. I'm not saying they have. But there's a lot of kids that are. And there's also just the fact that when kids are mean to each other, you should be able to lay in your bed in your room and not have somebody being mean to you right there. And that is gone. That part of the human experience of just kind of being alone and not distracted and not, that's really gone away. And I think it's really been detrimental to the way that kids interact with each other. And I think that's the reason that you see a lot of these kids struggle. And, I think it's super important to let the kids know that all other kids have this. Every parent I've talked to, every single one to a T has said that their kids this age are having the same situations. So it is not new. I don't remember it really being that way. Now, I don't know if it's that way as much with guys now. I know it really wasn't with us when we were young. And all the adult women that I've talked to said that, that teen years were really tough as girls. I guess I didn't notice it, or maybe I just didn't realize the depth of it. Because, I had a girlfriend in high school during those years, and she probably... And you know what? Thinking back, I do remember I do remember that they would group off, and my girlfriend was a cheerleader, and so half the cheerleaders were in one group and half the cheerleaders were in the other, and they still were kind of got along, but sometimes it got kind of nasty. And I mean, the guys, we just kind of picked our crew and hung out. And if you didn't like the guys, they just weren't in the crew. But I think it's important to let them know, I would say especially girls, but I don't know that that's the case because I know a lot of boys struggle now too. And just let them know that all the kids are struggling. And let them also understand that, I think a big thing that I tell my girls is in literally the day after you graduate, you're not going to see 99% of these people ever again. And if you see one or two of them consistently, if you communicate even with one or two of them consistently 3 years after you're out of high school, you're a statistical improbability. In other words, these kids are really, all they are is part players in a time in your life. And you can't get too obsessed about how they all feel about you and what you're doing. And that doesn't mean don't try to be a better person and everything and all of that. And, I find, it's funny because I read the verse of the day every day, which is just this little website. It gives you a Bible verse. And this Sunday, the verse was about loving your enemies. And there was this big prayer about how, from the person's perspective, that a lot of people were trying to really make them mad and hurt their feelings and everything, and asking God for the strength to respond to that with grace and kindness. And that's, and obviously I read that to my daughter and think that, if you get them to read books, that's one thing. If you get them to read the Bible, that's even better, I think, in my opinion. But just, getting them back to reading books and putting that phone down. And I realize all the parents struggle with it, and I struggle with it myself. But it's really pervasive, and I just look at it and I just feel bad for them. And there's all these sort of memes online about 70s and 80s kids and how we had it when we were young. Man, just kids in the neighborhood got their bikes and went and did whatever, played in the mud, built forts in the forest, just different stuff that just doesn't really seem to happen as much now. But it is a very precarious time, and I just would say to any parents or grandparents out there that kids are going through tough times that are that age, I would tell them to make sure that their kids know that all kids are going through that nowadays. I don't think there's any, I don't see how there's any kids who kind of just wake up in the morning and are like, oh, everybody loves me and things are great. And that follows through life too. It's a little easier to segregate yourself. So you might have someone in the workplace that you don't get along well with, but then you can go socialize with other people at night, right? And it's kind of that way in school, but it's really a little bit different because, you end up socializing with the people that you meet in school. So there's not this sort of separate altogether life. But it's critical, first of all, for adults, it's good to put your phone down and read books. I'm reading a really cool book right now. What I like to do is go to an old bookstore, a bookstore that has old used books, and buy a book that I've never heard of and read it. And so I'm reading this book that I saw and it looked kind of cool. I like the cover. It's called The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym. P-Y-M is the last name. I saw it. It's by Edgar Allan Poe, and I like Edgar Allan Poe. I've read some of his stuff. I think he's a brilliant author. So I started reading this book, and I make sure my kids can see me reading the book so they know, hey, Dad's reading. I'm not just talking about it. I'm actually reading the book. And it's an awesome story about these two kids in the early 1800s in England that stow away on a ship, and it hasn't really gotten super spooky yet. It's mostly just been kind of a little gory. There was a mutiny on the ship, and a lot of people died. But my point is, books can take you into a different world, and in a way, really, that because you're exercising all facets of your mind. And so I would encourage everybody to pick up some books if you've forgotten to read. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to read War and Peace. You don't have to read giant 600-page books. I'm so busy right now. I'm down to sort of shorter books. I haven't read any big books in 2 or 3 years. But encourage the kids to read books and support them and tell them, I think it's really important for them to know that this is everybody. All the kids are going through this now. And society's going to have to figure out a way to deal with this. And I know that a lot of schools, and Des Moines public schools now, I think starting next year, are not going to allow phones in the classroom. I think that's great. Some of the private schools have been doing that the whole time, and I think that's fantastic. But I know that this kind of seems like I'm giving a public service announcement saying phones are bad, and everyone's probably saying, yeah, we know that phones are bad. But I'm trying to give you a little bit of my perspective on a way to help the kids that are struggling with it and point out to them, just put your phone down, go take a walk outside. Just put your phone down, go read a book. Take an evening, just put the phone down. And we do that at our house, and we try to get them as far through the evening as we can with the phone down. And I think what we're going to start doing is just one day a week, it's phone down when you get home from school, and that's the end of it. But it's interesting that it's a struggle, right? Even though, I know, and I think my kids are aware, but it's just so addictive. You get to the point. Now, for me, it's a little different because, I kind of always have to be available. Even if I don't have a patient that's actively in the hospital, all my patients who have had joint replacements with me ever have my cell phone number, personal cell phone number, and I will get sometimes a text. It's very rare, but sometimes I'll get a text at night. I mean, most people don't text me or call me. I mean, I tell them, look, if you have an emergency or something serious, get a hold of me quick as possible. And most people have been super respectful and don't call me to ask, am I supposed to take my Tylenol 2 or 3 times a day? I don't get a lot of that. I get, hey, my knee is red. I'm worried that it might be infected. And of course, my answer is take a picture of it. Let's talk about it. Maybe, if they're from a distance, get a lot of patients from the radio show that come here from a distance. And sometimes I'll just say, why don't you go to the ER or whatever. So it's, for me, I have to have it. But I would tell you, when I retire, I'm walking around without my phone. I'll catch you later. I guarantee it. I will leave my phone for days, if not weeks on end, and catch up with people later. I'm looking forward to that. But right now, I feel this responsibility, since I've given my phone out to all those patients, that, I've answered texts from patients when I've been in Spain before and in New York and different places, because I just want people to have that. I kind of feel like my patients are my sheep, if you will. I got to make sure that they're well tended to, and that doesn't sleep. If the wolf comes and I'm sleeping, I still gotta get up and fight it off with my staff, I guess, if you will. So I have to have it. I'm looking forward to not having it, but I think it's important for the kids to try to get some time with the phone out of their hands and get the kids out riding their bikes, doing some things. And, it's worth a fight. It's worth an effort. It's worth what you're going to get from your kid, which is, rah, 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 I didn't have friends, and rah. But it's really worth it. And really, I think, super essential if you have teenage kids, preteen kids, even up into college. I'm sure college is way different than when I was there. Man, college, if you didn't like somebody, you never had to see them again. Boom. If they were in your class, you go walk and sit in the other part of that class, and you wouldn't have to deal with them at all. But just let them know that better days are coming, and they're not alone. Most kids, not just many, most kids are going through that roller coaster of, oh gosh, I'm doing well, and everybody likes me, and oh gosh, nobody likes me. It's just weird. It's just weird. So I was just kind of throwing that out there. Mental health is super, super important, and kids have to deal with things that can affect their mental health that we didn't have to deal with at all. And just trying to give a couple little suggestions, and hopefully maybe some of that will work. Anyway, tell the kids, go out and put this beautiful sun on their face. Of course, they've been checking the UV index on their phones probably to see when it's high. But get them outside. Get them to do some work in the yard or something like that. Just get them out. Get them enjoying nature and goodness and other people, and get those phones down. So with that, next time I promise I'll bring some orthopedics to the table on this orthopedic talk show. But I hope everybody's enjoying the weather, and you have a blessed week, Iowa.
This has been the St. Anthony Hospital Orthopedic Show with Dr. Richard Godding. For more information about Dr. Godding, his practice, or St. Anthony Hospital Orthopedics, go to www.santanthonyhospital.org or make an appointment by calling 712-794-5536.